Hey guys, tonight we're gonna glide gently into the watery heart of the Aztec world, where gardens float, canals sing with birdsong, and vegetables sprout from mud that once settled at the bottom of a sacred lake. You're standing on a patch of land that technically shouldn't exist, because it's not connected to anything solid. It's suspended, tethered by tree roots and human will, gently bobbing on the waters of Lake Xochimilco like a leaf in a dream. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and warm greenery. A heron flaps lazily across the sunrise sky, landing somewhere on a neighboring plot with an indignant squawk. You reach down, scoop up a handful of lake mud, and smear it along the narrow ridges that hem your garden's edge. There's a breeze, warm and fishy, and you haven't even had your morning tamale yet. Of course, you probably won't survive this, let's be honest. Your back hurts already, and you haven't even lifted the digging stick. Your sandals are soaked, your tunic clings to your knees, and the guy in the next chinampa just smirked at your knot-tying skills. But hang in there. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where and when we're drifting off together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake with the reeds rustling. It's early, just before dawn, but the chinampa calls. These floating farms aren't really boats. They don't drift much, thanks to carefully planted trees at the corners, usually ahuejotes, a kind of willow with serious root grip. Their roots stitch down through the soil and into the lakebed, giving your farm just enough stability to keep it from sailing away in a windstorm. You trudge to the edge, your sandals squelching in the shallow water that borders your plot. From here, your garden doesn't look like much, a stretch of rectangular green bordered by low earthen ridges, surrounded by calm canal water on all sides. But these ridges are more than dirt. They're carefully built layers of lake mud, decaying plant matter, and woven reeds, engineered over generations to hold shape, nourish crops, and handle foot traffic without collapsing. Chinampas are a kind of quiet engineering miracle. They're not rafts, they're artificial islands made by first laying down a lattice of branches and reeds, then piling mud and composted sludge on top in alternating layers. Every few feet, you plant one of those anchor trees at the corners. Ahuejotes are favorite because the roots don't mind soggy feet. Over time, the whole structure firms up, like a lasagna of lake goo and leaf mulch baked by the sun into a platform sturdy enough to walk, farm, and even nap on. And you, dear sleeper, are the proud steward of one of these floating miracles. The chinampa stretches about 30 meters long and just a few meters wide, perfect for managing by hand. Your first job, rebuilding the edges. Overnight, the gentle splash of water has worn down some of the ridge barriers. You scoop up more sticky lake mud, rich, dark, full of nutrients, and slap it onto the edge like you're frosting a weird, very organic cake. A dragonfly buzzes past your ear. Somewhere, a frog plops back into the canal with a wet plock. You sigh and roll your shoulders. There's something soothing about this daily routine. You're surrounded by water and sky, with the faint smells of maize and wet algae. Historians still argue whether chinampas were purely practical or carried ceremonial meaning as well. Some suggest they were designed not just to farm, but to honor the harmony between land and water, a kind of ecological middle ground. Others argue it was just a case of, hey, this swampy area isn't being used, let's make dinner grow here. You reach for your digging stick, the koa. It's a simple wooden tool, curved like a hockey stick with a sharpened tip, perfect for turning soil. There's no metal involved, just wood, your back muscles, and some good old-fashioned sweat. You walk the rows, turning earth gently, loosening it for planting. Your crop this season? A mix of maize, amaranth, and chili peppers. They'll keep your family fed, and if all goes well, give you a little extra to trade at the market. And as you work, the sun climbs higher, painting the lake gold. Birds call from the trees. Canoes start to stir in the canals, voices floating across the water, neighbors heading out to tend their own floating plots. You nod at one as she paddles by, a woven basket of young tomato seedlings in her lap. She offers you a tamale, hot, wrapped in corn husk, and you trade her a smile and a handful of fresh herbs. And just like that, the Chinampa becomes more than a garden. It's a neighborhood, a slow-moving, low-tech, high-efficiency network of people, plants, water, and mud. It's your morning, your ritual, your peace. There's a fringe theory some archaeologists float, pun intended, that Chinampas functioned like social maps. The closer your plot was to the ceremonial center or major market canal, the more prestigious your role. Others say that's overthinking it. Maybe it was just about who had the best mud. You pause for a moment, wiping your forehead. Your hands are covered in lake sludge. There's a beetle crawling across your foot. But there's a kind of quiet satisfaction here. No traffic, no glowing screens, just water, earth, and sky. A flock of ducks quacks somewhere nearby and you groan slightly. That probably means someone's lettuce got raided. Again. But that's tomorrow's problem. You sit down on the edge of your Chinampa, legs dangling into the cool water, watching ripples spread outward as a canoe glides past. Your feet kick gently. The sun warms your back. The garden hums with quiet life. And the mud, oh, the mud is glorious.
You wake up earlier today, just as the fog is lifting off the canals, curling in thin ribbons across the water. The surface glimmers with soft reflections of willow trees and reed huts. There's a freshness in the air that only exists before sunrise, somewhere between wet stone and lake mint. You stretch your legs, grab your trusty digging stick, the koa again, and head to the Chinampa, where today it's all about the art of digging. See, farming on a Chinampa isn't just throwing seeds in dirt. It's closer to gardening ballet with a stick. The koa may look simple, but it's an extension of your hand, your back, and maybe your soul after the third hour of use. You squat at the edge of the Chinampa, feet braced on the packed mud ridge, and lean into the first scoop. The soil gives easily. It's rich, dark, slightly damp, like chocolate cake, but less delicious and more likely to grow turnips. You draw a line in the earth, another. The rhythmic motion of scraping, scooping, and turning the soil feels strangely meditative. You're not just loosening dirt, you're aerating it, giving it breath, opening pockets for roots to spread, for water to slip through, for the worms, your squishy coworkers, to do their business. The Aztecs didn't use plows or oxen. They didn't need them. With this perfectly manageable parcel of floating farmland, everything is done by hand. And when your hands are calloused and your stick is sharpened just right, there's nothing quite so satisfying as digging into that lake-fed earth. But be careful, there's a frog under there. You apologize quietly and nudge it aside with your toe. Now, you might be wondering, why not just plant on land like everyone else? Well, the Valley of Mexico was tricky terrain. Lots of swamp, lots of shallow lakes, not a ton of dry, flat real estate. So the Chinampa was the Aztec response. Build the land where there was none. Invent a farming method where nature didn't bother. And it worked beautifully. These plots were incredibly productive, so much so that historians still argue whether Chinampas had the highest yield of any pre-modern agricultural system. Some claim farmers could harvest up to 7 crops a year in the same spot. Others roll their eyes and say, let's not exaggerate, maybe 3 or 4. Either way, it's impressive. Your muscles warm as the sun rises higher. You stand to stretch, brushing flecks of soil off your knees. From the water's edge, the plots look geometric, long rectangles in neat, careful rows, all separated by glistening canals. It's like a wet checkerboard, or a city grid designed by someone who really, really loved symmetry and squash blossoms. That symmetry matters. It's not just aesthetic, it's functional. The plots are organized so water can flow evenly between them, so every plant gets a drink and no one has to paddle too far with their compost basket. Speaking of compost, you pull over the reed basket resting near the corner tree. It's heavy with lake muck, shredded maize stalks, and something suspiciously fishy. You don't ask questions, you just grab handfuls and spread the mixture into the furrows you've dug. This stuff is gold. Organic, nutrient-rich, and slightly smelly gold. The Aztecs were masters of recycling long before blue bins were a thing. Nothing went to waste. Fish bones, rotten vegetables, duck droppings. It all became tomorrow's nourishment. And it all got worked in, by hand, with love, and mild grumbling. But let's get back to the digging stick. The koa is elegant in its simplicity. Just a long, flat shaft of hardwood, often from mesquite or oak, with a flared, slightly pointed end. It's carved and sanded smooth so it doesn't splinter or dig into your palms, and it becomes your partner in this quiet agricultural dance. You dig, turn, sprinkle compost, pat the soil, move forward. Again, again. It's the rhythm of a job done right. Somewhere across the canal, a neighbor sneezes. Another clears her throat to sing softly as she digs. The song floats to you in the morning mist, and you hum along without really knowing the words. As the sun climbs, you move from one row to the next. The chinampa warms beneath your feet. Birds trill. Something splashes, maybe a fish or a very confused turtle. You lean into your work and smile. Every few steps you pause to collect a wriggling worm and toss it to the base of your milpa, the maize plants. They're not just worms, they're workers. Tiny, unpaid, entirely unbothered by labor regulations. Quirky side fact, some chinampa farmers, according to fringe reports, kept worm gardens, mini compost pits where worms were fed avocado peels and flower petals. Fat, happy worms made faster soil, and the Aztecs were nothing if not efficient. You dig until the whole plot is turned. Your legs ache, but it's the good kind of ache, the kind that says something real got done today. You wipe your brow. A dragonfly lands on the handle of your koa. For a moment, you both rest. The water laps gently at the chinampa's edge, and you take in the view. Other plots in the distance, some thick with tomato vines, others bursting with marigolds or rows of dark green chard. There's something timeless about this place, something soft and steady. Your arms may be sore, but your soul feels a little quieter now, a little slower, like the canal water itself. You gather your tools, lay the koa across your shoulders, and take one last look at the soil. Freshly turned, perfectly prepped, lightly steaming in the morning sun. It'll be ready for planting tomorrow. But for now, you deserve a nap under the willow.
The smell hits you first. Wet leaves, crushed petals, and something faintly sweet like overripe squash. It's compost day. You hoist the reed basket once more, the bottom damp with lake water and the unmistakable seep of decomposition. But this isn't trash, it's treasure. Because on a chinampa, the real magic isn't just what you plant, it's what you feed the soil. You kneel beside your freshly dug rows and begin layering compost between your fingers, like seasoning a perfect recipe. You've got the mix just right today. Shredded maize stalks, rotted lake weeds, the remnants of last week's chili skins, a few pulverized fish bones. If you're lucky, maybe even a bit of duck poop, the gourmet upgrade. The Aztecs didn't just throw things away, they transformed them, and compost was the crown jewel of this transformation. There was no fertilizer store, no synthetic blend. You made your own, often with ingredients gathered during quiet paddles through the canal or walks around the market. There's a particular kind of lakeweed you're fond of. It drapes itself in green silk over the surface of the water and clings to your paddle like it wants to be picked. It's called spirulina. Yes, the same algae that modern-day smoothie drinkers swear by. Historians believe Aztecs harvested it in large quantities, drying it into cakes and using it as both food and a soil booster. Spirulina for the crops, spirulina for the people. Everyone wins. As you spread the compost, you think about your neighbors doing the same. Down the canal, a family is turning in last season's maize husks. A little boy proudly dumps a basket of duckweed. Across the water, someone's stirring a steaming pit where last week's kitchen scraps are cooking into a rich, dark blend. The smell isn't great, but the results are. Aztec composting didn't happen in big industrial heaps. Instead, it was hyper-local. Every family had its system, its secrets. Some even had compost gods, small clay figurines they buried in the pile to bring fertility. Is that superstition? Maybe.
But you've never had a bad yield when your compost idol was smiling. Your fingers are brown now, nails packed with earth, but you don't mind. This isn't mess, it's the foundation of a floating Eden. Each pinch of compost is packed with life, microbes, minerals, magic. And here's where the science kicks in, if you can call it that. The soil in a chinampa isn't just lake mud. It's a carefully balanced cocktail of silt, humus, and decomposed plant matter, aerated by worms, and kept moist by the surrounding water. It never dries out, it never floods. It's the perfect middle ground, moist but not soggy, dense but not compacted. Goldilocks would plant here. You take a moment to remember what your father once told you. A chinampa without a compost is like a canoe without a paddle. It just won't go anywhere. And it's true. Your best crops, plump beans, juicy tomatoes, leafy amaranth, have always come after days like this. Days where your back ached and your hands stank, but your soil sang. Still, there are debates, even now. Historians still argue whether the Aztecs practiced crop rotation in the way Europeans did. Some claim they staggered maize, beans, and squash, the three sisters, in precise patterns to restore nutrients. Others think it was more intuitive, based on observation, family traditions, and a little divine whisper from the maize god. You can't say for sure. All you know is that every 7th planting, you give a plot a break. Let the weeds grow a little. Toss on extra mulch. Maybe even plant a bed of marigolds to please the spirits. Speaking of spirits, you pause to sprinkle a few marigold petals across today's compost. Not for nutrition, for beauty, for balance, for the soul of the soil. There's a quiet satisfaction in watching the mound of compost disappear into your field. You pat down the last row, your hands warm and sticky, and sit back on your heels to admire your work. Then, because this is the real test, you grab a pinch of the finished mix and sniff. Sharp, sweet, earthy. Perfect. You mark the corners of the plot with little reed flags so no one steps on it before planting. That was a hard lesson learned last year when your cousin's sandal flattened your prized squash sprout. You haven't let him forget it. The day grows warmer, and the smell of compost fades into the background of buzzing bees and distant laughter. There's music floating from a market raft nearby, someone playing a flute from bone. You sway along, half asleep, half smiling. A dragonfly zips past your nose. A heron dips its beak into the canal. You lean back, stretch out in the shade of the ahuehuete tree, and let your fingers trail through the cool living soil beside you. It's more than just dirt now. It's history, future food, a gift made from yesterday's scraps. You close your eyes. The chinampa breathes around you. Everything, you realize, is feeding something else. And that's the real miracle here. Not just that you grow food on water, but that even rot has a purpose. Even waste has value. Even the stinkiest duckweed has its place in paradise.
You're up early again, barefoot on the planks, mist swirling low over the water. The sun hasn't fully risen, but the chinampa is already alive. Not with noise exactly, but with that silent bustle you can feel in your chest, plants waking, water lapping, insects buzzing their morning gossip. Today's job? Irrigation. Now here's the funny thing. Most people, centuries later, imagine chinampas as, well, floating, like a raft. But you know better. Chinampas don't drift. They're tethered, rooted, part of the lake but not adrift in it. That's the secret. They're built strong and fixed deep. Yet they need water, always. Even in the middle of a lake, the crops thirst. You crouch by the canal edge and dip your clay bowl, smooth, cool, handmade by your aunt who insists her pots hold blessings. You fill it, stand, and walk the rows,
tipping water gently at the base of each plant. It's a rhythm. Dip, pour, breathe. Dip, pour, breathe. The water here isn't just any water. It's rich with life. Tiny fish wriggle through the shallows. Duckweed floats in lazy mats. This isn't a chlorinated pool. It's a whole ecosystem. And your crops? They love it. The canal system around the Chinampas isn't random either. It's like veins around a beating heart, designed with obsessive care. Narrow canals for shallow roots, deeper ones for canoe access. Small dikes and walkways guide your steps and slow the water's flow. Nature and nurture in perfect conversation. Sometimes, if it hasn't rained for a while, you help the irrigation along by loosening the soil. Not too much, just enough to let the roots breathe and the water seep deeper. You've learned to read the plants like faces. Drooping bean leaves? Time to give them extra. Perky tomato vines? They're good for now. Everything speaks, if you know how to listen. There's a system to it all, passed down in half whispers and firm nudges. Your grandfather once showed you how to stir the top layer of water before scooping to avoid mosquito eggs. Your mother taught you to thank each plant after watering, even if it's just a nod or a hum. It's not about magic, it's about respect. You pour life in, you get life out. But it's not always easy. The canals require maintenance. Sometimes the walls collapse. Other times the roots of the ahuehuete trees reach out like greedy fingers trying to steal soil from the edges. When that happens, you and your cousins pile in the canoe with shovels and woven mats, patching the breaches like little engineers. Historians still argue whether the Aztecs had a true system of formal irrigation, or if it was more communal, improvisational, neighbor to neighbor. Some say there were rotating water rights. Others insist it was a free-for-all with quiet rules. You've seen both. Some days your neighbors share freely. Other times there's a little passive-aggressive hoarding. Human nature, no matter the century. But on most mornings like this, there's no conflict. Just the soft swish of water meeting earth, the gentle click of insects brushing against maize stalks, and the splash of a bird taking a quick bath in a flooded furrow. You stop to admire your handiwork, each plant with a little drink, each row shimmering faintly under the low sun. The soil darkens where it's moist, and your mind drifts to a childhood memory, running across a freshly watered field and slipping straight onto your back. You'd cried, of course, but also laughed. You still have the scar from the reed that caught your shin. You're older now, careful, but the water still sings the same song, that low, gurgling melody of nurture, of connection, of balance. Sometimes you wonder how this all came to be. Who figured it out first? Who looked at a swamp and thought, hey, we could farm here? Probably someone desperate, or very, very clever. Either way, you're grateful. Because this irrigation system, simple as it looks, is genius. It needs no pumps, no hoses, no batteries. It moves because of gravity, sun, and you. A bit of muscle, a bit of know-how, and the occasional nudge from a curious frog who jumps into your water bowl when you're not looking. And when it rains, the rain. That's when you really see the design shine. The canals swell just enough to feed the roots, but never flood the beds. The soil, already saturated with lake mist, absorbs each drop like a sponge. You don't need to do much then. Just watch. Smile. Maybe hum a song your grandmother used to sing. Something about corn gods dancing on lily pads. Not everything is perfect, of course. Sometimes the water stagnates. Sometimes the weeds choke the flow. But that's why you have your reed rake. That's why you get up early. You're not just a gardener. You're a caretaker of veins, of vessels, of life. And you wouldn't trade it for anything. By mid-morning, the sun is high enough to make the water sparkle. You finished your rounds. Your shoulders ache, but there's a deep, delicious satisfaction in knowing every plant on your plot has been seen, tended, cared for. You take one last scoop of water, not for the crops, but for your face. It's cool, refreshing, a splash of the lake's own kindness. You wipe your brow, lean your bowl against the tree, and sit on the edge of the plank walkway. All around you, the chinampas glitter, a checkerboard of green and blue and mud, a floating world held together by roots and effort and old wisdom. You smile. The water knows your name.
The midday heat rests heavy on your shoulders, but the real work is just beginning. Time to deal with the weeds. You crouch low among the squash vines and maize stalks, hands already sticky with the sap of morning chores. There's always something poking through the soil that doesn't belong. Thin reeds with attitudes, spindly imposters trying to muscle in on your carefully arranged garden beds. Weeding, as dull as it may sound to outsiders, is an art form here. You don't just yank at green bits like a careless child. You observe, you consider, you weigh whether a leaf should stay or go, like a judge passing sentence. Not everything green is bad, and some intruders are allowed if they help the soil or draw away pests, for example. But others are greedy little thieves. They get the boot. You reach for a narrow-leafed stalk and tug with just the right pressure, feeling that satisfying pop as its roots release. There's a rhythm to it, just like irrigation, except this one's quieter, more focused. You begin to lose yourself in the task. A tiny cloud of gnats swirls around your ear and you swat absently. The sun glints off the water in the canal beside you. Somewhere behind the willows, a neighbor's canoe bumps gently against its mooring with a hollow thunk, thunk, thunk. This is the music of the chinampa, slow, repetitive, grounding. Aztec gardeners were masters of observation. You've heard the old tales, how priests would study the plants at different times of day, tracking shadow lengths and leaf positions, sketching soil maps into the dirt with twigs. Know your garden as you know your own heartbeat, they'd say. And weeding was part of that rhythm, a way of checking in. But it's not always as peaceful as this. Some days the weeds fight back, thorny little monsters that slice at your fingertips. Others, they hide beneath the healthy plants, twisting like silent saboteurs. Once you even found a snake curled beneath a suspicious clump of purslane. You gave it a wide berth and came back with a stick. Today, though, it's a different kind of challenge. The sedges have returned, those wiry, grass-like things that sprout too fast and hog the sunlight. You sigh, pull one up, and spot 3 more waiting underneath like cocky little siblings. It's never-ending. Historians still debate the extent to which the Aztecs used tools versus just their bare hands. Some claim there were elaborate wooden scrapers and hooked sticks. Others insist the best gardeners used only fingers, developing calluses thick as bark. You've tried both. There's a certain satisfaction to feeling the root give way under your own strength. But when it's hot and the weeds are stubborn, that hooked stick your uncle made comes in handy. You pause to examine your work. The rows ahead are clean, orderly, green in all the right places, but you know the weeds will be back. That's the deal. Gardens don't stay neat. They stay managed, and only if you show up every day. Still, there's beauty in that bargain. You get what you give. Pulling weeds is a reminder that even paradise needs maintenance. Floating farms don't float on luck. The maize leaves rustle, and you glance up just in time to spot a squirrel darting along the walkway. It pauses, stares at you like you've interrupted something terribly important, and then disappears into the underbrush. You chuckle. The animals treat the chinampas like their own city, and you're just one of the tenants. You take a break. Stretch your back, roll your neck, let your fingers trail in the cool canal water. The weeding basket beside you is full, a lumpy pile of green casualties. Some of these will go to compost. Others, the edible ones, like chiletes, you'll bring home for dinner. Not all weeds are enemies. Some are just misunderstood. You remember your grandmother explaining that back in her youth, certain weeds were prized during hard seasons. She'd whisper their names like passwords: chaya, amaranth, epazote. Plants with flavors strong enough to wake up even the sleepiest stew.
"Don't fear the wild things," she used to say. "Just teach them where they're allowed to grow." That sticks with you now, as you decide to leave a patch of purslane along the eastern row. It's not crowding anything, and your younger brother loves it fried in eggs. The work slows as the day stretches on. Your movements grow automatic. Your mind drifts. You wonder what it would be like to see the Chinampa from above. Not just your little plot, but the whole network. From the hilltop temple, maybe? You imagine looking down and seeing a checkerboard of greens and browns and blues, crisscrossed by canoes, dotted with hatched huts, and shaded by tall trees planted deliberately along the perimeter, an orderly, living city made of gardens. And somewhere in the middle of that vision is you, sweaty, bent over, quietly wrestling with a stubborn stem. A sudden gust of wind ripples through the maze. You smell damp earth, wildflowers, and the faintest whiff of fish from the nearby market. It's all part of the experience. The weeding is nearly done now. The rows look cleaner. The crops stand taller, prouder. You wipe your hands on your tunic and feel the comforting grit of soil beneath your nails. There's satisfaction in knowing this was your doing. Your eye, your patience, your effort. No one else would have known which weeds to spare and which to pull. This garden has your fingerprints all over it, literally. And when you walk away later this evening, back toward the main walkway and the sounds of cooking fires starting up, you'll glance back over your shoulder and nod. Not for anyone else's sake, just to acknowledge the quiet, humble victory of today. A day without drama. A day with dirt under your nails and order restored. You smile. Even the weeds seem to sigh and surrender.
You rise with the sun again, your feet already aching from yesterday's work. But today, the task is different. It's time to rotate crops. Crop rotation might not sound like the most thrilling aspect of gardening, and honestly it isn't. But here in the Chinampa fields, it's not just a smart strategy, it's survival. You glance at the rows of maize, beans, and squash stretching ahead of you, planted with care last season. Their time is nearly up. As you begin clearing the old stalks, your hands fall into that familiar rhythm. Maize first. Its tall, dried husks make satisfying crinkles as you gather them. You twist and pull, watching clouds of dust dance in the light. Then come the beans, their vines tangled like sleepy snakes curling around wooden stakes. And finally the squash, low to the ground with broad leaves that always hide at least one sneaky insect that doesn't want to be disturbed. It's not just about getting rid of the old, it's about planning what goes next. The Aztecs didn't just plant things willy-nilly. There was a method, a cycle. You don't want to grow the same plant in the same spot year after year. Doing so depletes the soil. Instead, you rotate. Maize goes here this time, but next season, beans will take its place. Beans, with their magical little roots, give the soil nitrogen, restoring balance. After that, squash might come in, its wide leaves helping to suppress new weeds. You think of the three sisters, maize, beans, and squash, the holy trinity of Aztec agriculture. Each one supports the others, like siblings who occasionally bicker but always watch each other's backs. There's an oddly comforting logic to it. Everything has its time, nothing overstays its welcome. As you work, your older cousin joins you. He's brought a clay tablet smeared with charcoal lines, a simple diagram of the planting schedule. He grunts, points at the plot on the left, and says, "Amaranth here, next moon." You nod. Amaranth grows fast, and the elders say it's good for the body, packed with strength for warriors and protein for the sick. Plus, its flowers are strangely pretty, like tiny crimson fireworks. You finish clearing one row and drag the plant remains to the compost mound. This isn't waste, this is future soil. The Aztecs understood that even decay had purpose. You sprinkle a bit of lake mud over the pile to keep it moist and wriggling with nutrients. Back in the garden, you start tilling the soil gently with a carved wooden paddle. It's not deep digging. The roots of Chinampa crops don't need it. Just enough to loosen things up, to let air in, to wake the earth before its new tenants arrive. There's a rhythm to this too. Paddle, twist, lift.
You start humming under your breath, one of the old work songs about a lazy god who forgot to plant his squash and had to barter with ants. Your cousin joins in on the chorus. Historians still argue whether the Aztecs practiced formal crop mapping, assigning plots based on celestial cycles and ritual calendars, or whether they simply relied on farmer wisdom passed down through the generations. You figure it's probably both. The stars give you signs, but your feet on this soil, that's what tells you what it really needs. You pause to check the moisture, pressing your palm to the dirt. Cool and slightly sticky. Good. You smell it too. Rich, wet, alive. There's still more to rotate. Tomatoes, chili peppers, and herbs get their turns too. And if you're feeling bold, maybe you'll try a patch of huautzintli, an ancient green with tiny clustered flowers and a bitter taste that only your grandfather loves. It's an acquired craving, like fermented fish or overly dramatic poetry. Lunch comes and goes in a blur. A bowl of maize porridge, a few fresh beans, and a hunk of squash pass between you and your cousin under the shade of a willow tree. You don't talk much. Both of you are too busy chewing and listening to the sounds of the chinampa around you. Insects buzz, birds caw, and somewhere nearby, a child laughs as he chases a runaway duck. You return to the field with renewed energy, starting the process of planting new seeds. Each one is tucked carefully into the soil with a flick of the wrist, a gentle press, a whispered hope. You remember the old prayer, "May you rise with the rain and bow to the sun." You don't say it out loud, you're not a priest, but you feel it all the same. The crop rotation isn't just about keeping the soil rich. It's about acknowledging that everything in this world must change. The gods rotate, the seasons rotate, the market stalls change faces, and even your own hands, once soft, are now rough and worn. Everything circles. You think of the chinampa builders who came before you, those who first pulled mud from the lake bottom, stacked it into rafts, planted willows along the edges, and watched as the island slowly became permanent. What a strange idea, building land from water. But it worked. It still works. As the sun dips lower, you mark the newly planted rows with small stones, not because you'll forget what's there, but because your younger siblings always wander through and trample things when they chase lizards. The stones are a silent warning. This patch is sacred now. You finish just as the last golden light slides across the canal's surface. The garden looks bare for now, just rows of damp earth and tiny hopeful sprouts. But you know what's coming. In a few weeks, it'll be bursting with life again. Tomorrow, there'll be more to do. Watering, trimming, pest control. But tonight, you've earned your rest. You sit on the edge of the walkway, legs dangling over the canal, watching the light fade. A dragonfly buzzes past, skimming the water, then vanishes into the dusk. The soil is quiet. The seeds are sleeping. And you're content. You've kept the cycle moving.
You're up before the sun today, because it's not just any morning, it's fertilizer hauling day. No one dreams of becoming a chinampa gardener for this part of the job. It's smelly, sticky, and occasionally attracts unwelcome attention from nosy ducks and the odd curious dog. But without fertilizer, all the careful planting, all the thoughtful crop rotation wouldn't mean much. You need nutrients. The soil needs fuel. You begin with a paddle across the mist-covered canal, pushing your flat-bottomed canoe through a soft patch of duckweed. The water is silent, except for the occasional thunk as your pole hits submerged roots. In the pre-dawn hush, even the birds seem reluctant to start singing. Your first stop? The family latrine. Yes, that's right, the Aztecs, efficient as ever, wasted nothing. Human waste was often collected and composted, carefully stored in clay pots or pits. It's called night soil, and while the name is poetic, the smell is anything but. You scoop the processed mix into a wide basket lined with banana leaves. It's already aged a bit, no longer fresh, but still potent. Then you sprinkle in some ash from last night's cooking fire to cut the scent and balance the acidity. The result?
fertilizer gold. You add other ingredients too: pulverized lakeweed, crushed fish bones, bits of spoiled maize, and even shredded feathers. Everything gets blended together, a chunky stew of nutrients that would make modern gardeners both envious and slightly nauseous. By the time you return to your chinampa, the sky has gone lavender blue, and the willows along the shore rustle in a sleepy breeze. You kneel at the edge of your plot and begin spreading the fertilizer. Not too much. This isn't about dumping, it's about balance. As you work, you spot a few earthworms wriggling in the rich soil. That's a good sign. Earthworms mean the land is healthy. They aerate the ground and break down matter. You lean in close and whisper, "Keep up the good work, little friend," before gently tucking more compost around the base of a young chili plant. Historians still argue whether the Aztecs classified soil types systematically or used more intuitive, experience-based methods to determine where to fertilize. Either way, you trust your hands. You can feel the difference. Some patches feel gritty and dry, while others are soft and pliant. Your fingers read the language of the earth, fluent without formal training. You pause at the maize rows, where stalks are just beginning to show signs of tasseling. This is where fertilizer matters most. You sprinkle it carefully around the base, not touching the stems directly. You know too much can burn the roots. A nearby frog croaks loudly. You smile. Frogs love this damp, rich space, and they help control the mosquito population, another quiet partnership in your little ecosystem. At midday, you take a break under the shade of a reed-roofed shelter. You pour a small gourd of water over your head, feeling it drip down your neck, cooling your sun-warmed skin. Lunch is simple again. Grilled amaranth cakes, a smear of bean paste, and a slice of cactus fruit. But today, the food tastes better. Maybe because you're thinking about what made it grow. You remember your grandmother's voice, sharp and proud. No crop grows fat on sunshine alone. She was a firm believer in muck. Refueled, you head back out to finish the last section of fertilizing. This time, you use lake mud, thick, dark, and full of decaying plant life. You scoop it with a woven basket and plop it gently at the base of young herbs. It smells like swamp and sweet grass, and your hands come away stained brown, like they're made of the earth itself. You hum a soft tune while you work, something about the moon and maize, passed down from your uncle who sang it mostly off-key. There's a rhythm here that's almost meditative. Scoop, spread, pat. Scoop, spread, pat. A shadow passes overhead, a heron, wings wide, gliding silently. You take that as a blessing. You remember when you were younger, you hated this chore. You gagged at the smell, whined about the mud, but now you understand. This part, the dirt, the decay, the messy underlayer, is what allows the chinampa to bloom. Without it, nothing thrives. And in a strange way, it's beautiful. By the time you're finished, your arms ache and your knees are stained green and brown, but your rows are neatly mulched, fed, and content. You sit back on your heels and survey the patchwork of greens and browns before you, breathing deeply despite the remaining funk in the air. You notice how the willows at the edge seem to lean inward slightly, as if admiring your work. The wind rustles their leaves like gentle applause. A final touch, you gather a small bundle of dried lakeweed and sprinkle it over the freshly fertilized areas. It will help retain moisture, protect the surface from sun scorch, and slowly break down into the next generation of compost. The cycle continues. Back in the canoe, drifting home with the empty baskets, you watch the clouds turn pink and gold. Ducks paddle lazily beside you. One tries to hop in, clearly hoping for a leftover snack, but you shoo it gently. Try again tomorrow. You dock your canoe, stretch your arms skyward, and head toward home. The evening meal is waiting, and maybe, if your sister hasn't hogged the blanket, you'll get a good night's sleep. But even as you close your eyes later, the smell of earth and compost lingers in your memory. And it's not unpleasant. It smells like growth. You wake to the soft chirping of birds and the distant splash of water. Another day in your floating garden awaits. Today you focus on water management, one of the most crucial yet subtle parts of keeping Chinampas thriving. The canals surrounding your plots aren't just there for show. They are the lifeblood of the Chinampa system, bringing in fresh water, carrying away waste, and providing a unique ecosystem. Your task today is to maintain the delicate balance, ensuring the water is clean enough to nourish your crops, but not so stagnant that it invites pests or disease. You begin by inspecting the wooden stakes and woven reeds that form the edges of your Chinampa. These barriers are like a living fence, holding the fertile soil in place while allowing water to flow gently underneath. Over time, you've learned to listen to the creaks and groans of this structure, each sound telling you if the walls need reinforcing. As you carefully press your paddle into the water, you notice some murky patches near the edge. These spots are prime candidates for cleaning. You lean over and scoop a handful of slimy algae mixed with floating debris, tossing it into your basket. This muck, while a natural part of the lake's ecology, can block sunlight from reaching submerged plants and disrupt oxygen levels. Water hyacinths, those pretty but invasive plants, have also started sneaking in, their bulbous roots strangling native species. You pull them out carefully, knowing that too many hyacinths can turn canals into impenetrable green carpets. Maintaining water clarity is more than a chore, it's a dance with nature. You remember how elders once told you that the canals breathe. They inhale nutrients from the soil and exhale life back to the gardens. When that breath falters, the whole system suffers. You check the small fish darting under the water. Mosquito fish, native to the region, that feast on larvae before they become pests. Their presence is a reassuring sign that your water quality is good. You smile, grateful for these tiny helpers. Historians still argue whether the Aztecs engineered canal flow using underground channels or simply relied on natural currents and seasonal rains. Whatever the case, you know firsthand the importance of water moving gently but consistently. Midday heat creeps in, and you stop to wipe your brow. A breeze stirs the cattails lining the banks, their rustling sounds blending with distant laughter from children playing on neighboring Chinampas. You glide your canoe to a nearby embankment where a family of ducks nestles in the reeds. You pause, watching a mother duck lead her ducklings across the water with careful patience. It's a reminder that your work supports more than just crops. It supports an entire microcosm. Back at your plot, you adjust small wooden sluice gates that control water levels. Too much water and your roots will drown, too little and they'll wither. You test the moisture in the soil with your fingers, cool, damp, and just right. Later, you plant water-loving herbs like mint and cilantro along the canal edges. Their roots filter water, reducing toxins while attracting beneficial insects. Their fresh scent mingles with the lake's earthy aroma, a small luxury in the hard work of Chinampa gardening. As the afternoon fades, you sit on the bank, dipping your toes into the cool water. The sun lowers slowly, casting long shadows over your floating island. You think about how this balance of water and land has sustained generations, a testament to careful observation and respect for nature's rhythms. Your hands are tired but steady. You feel connected to the water, the soil, the plants, and the stories whispered by the wind. You stand, ready to paddle home, the soft splash of your oar marking the end of another day in this living garden.
The morning air is thick with the scent of wet earth and blooming flowers as you begin the delicate task of pest control on your chinampa. Unlike modern farms that rely on chemicals, your methods are gentler, blending with nature rather than fighting it outright. You start by inspecting your crops, maize, beans, squash, and chilies, for any signs of unwanted visitors. Tiny holes in leaves, the glint of beetle shells, or the telltale trails of caterpillars can quickly spell trouble if ignored. But you're not just on the lookout for pests, you're also searching for their natural predators. Spiders, ladybugs, and frogs serve as your garden's tiny guardians. You gently relocate a cluster of ladybugs to a heavily infested chili plant, knowing they will feast on aphids and help keep the balance. A small frog hops out from under a leaf and disappears into the moist soil, nature's pest control in action. Your approach relies heavily on companion planting, mixing crops that naturally repel pests or attract beneficial insects. Marigolds planted near beans confuse aphids, while basil and cilantro bring in pollinators and predators alike. It's a method honed over generations, a living example of agricultural wisdom. You pause to crush a few dried chili peppers, rubbing the powder onto the stems of your young plants. The spicy barrier discourages some insects without harming the soil or your harvest. Your fingers tingle from the residue, and you chuckle softly. Not all pests like a little heat, you muse. Historians still debate the extent to which the Aztecs practiced integrated pest management, or whether it evolved more casually through trial and error. Regardless, your experience shows it's a careful balance, knowing when to intervene and when to let nature take its course. As the sun climbs higher, you craft small traps from woven reeds and maize husks, baiting them with sweetened water to catch pesky flies. These traps hang from poles around your chinampa, gently swaying in the breeze like tiny lanterns of protection. By midday, a light rain begins to fall, softening the air and washing away dust. You welcome the moisture, knowing it helps wash away some pests and strengthens your plants. You lean back on the shaded edge of your plot and watch as droplets ripple across the water's surface, breaking the reflection of the sky into shimmering fragments. A nearby heron surveys the canal, patiently waiting for a fish to stray too close. You smile, thinking about the interconnectedness of all life here, how your chinampa supports birds, fish, insects, and people alike. As you finish your rounds, you notice a small patch of squash leaves curling oddly. You kneel and inspect them carefully, deciding to prune the affected parts to prevent further spread. It's a subtle reminder that even the most careful gardener can't control everything. You gather your tools and rest for a moment, listening to the soft chorus of nature. The gentle buzz of bees, the splash of water, and the occasional croak of a frog create a soothing soundtrack. Your chinampa isn't just a farm, it's a thriving community. As afternoon light fades, you reflect on how pest control here is less about domination and more about respect. It's about working with the land and its creatures, understanding their roles, and gently guiding them toward harmony. With a final sweep of your hand over the crops, you prepare to head back. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but for now, the garden feels balanced and alive. The morning sun filters softly through the willow branches as you set out to tend to the harvest. This part of chinampa life brings a quiet satisfaction. The slow, deliberate gathering of fruits and vegetables that you've nurtured with patience and care. You start with the maize, the staple crop. Ears are plump, their silk threads golden and drying. You gently peel back the husks to check the kernels, making sure they're full and firm. Any that show signs of pests or disease get set aside,
a reminder that not every harvest is perfect, but every seed holds promise. Next, you move to the tomatoes and chilies, the colors bright against the lush green leaves. You pluck ripe fruit carefully, mindful not to bruise or damage the plants. There's an art to harvesting, knowing when to pick and when to wait. Too soon, and the flavor lacks. Too late, and the fruit spoils. You carry your basket to the edge of the chinampa, pausing to admire the reflection of the sky in the still water. It's a mirror to your efforts, a floating testament to balance and care. Alongside the harvest, you gather herbs, cilantro, mint, and epazote, their scents mingling in the warm air. You plan to dry some for later use, weaving them into small bundles tied with reed twine. Historians still argue whether the Aztecs harvested crops seasonally or maintained a near-constant cycle of planting and gathering. Either way, your routine feels timeless, rooted in observation and tradition. You take a moment to check the storage pits, where some crops are kept cool and dry. The pits are lined with reeds and covered with mud, natural refrigerators, preserving food for days or weeks. It's clever, simple technology that keeps your family fed beyond the immediate harvest. As you finish, you notice a small group of children playing nearby, their laughter drifting across the canal. They imitate your careful movements, pretending to harvest their own invisible crops. You smile at their enthusiasm. It reminds you of your own childhood, learning these skills slowly, with patience. By midday, you bring the harvest back to your home, where the kitchen awaits. The scent of cooking fills the air as your family prepares traditional dishes, corn tortillas, bean stews, and fresh salsa made from your very own crops. You sit down to eat, savoring the flavors that grew from your hands and the earth beneath the water. It's a humble meal, but rich with the story of care, community, and connection. As afternoon light fades and evening draws near, you reflect on the cycle of growth and harvest, how each step, from planting to gathering, is part of a larger rhythm that has sustained your people for centuries. And with the last bite, you feel a quiet pride, knowing that your chinampa is more than a garden, it's a living legacy.
You wake to a gentle mist hovering over the water, the perfect calm before the day's work begins. Today, your focus shifts to soil fertility, the secret to those bountiful crops floating serenely on the lake. The rich, dark soil beneath your feet is no ordinary dirt. It's a carefully crafted blend of mud dredged from the lake bottom, decomposed plant matter, and ash from previous harvests. This mix, known as tepetat, holds the nutrients your plants crave, but it needs regular tending to stay fertile. You gather your tools and canoe to the edge of your chinampa, where the soil beds rise just above water level. With practiced hands, you begin to add fresh layers of nutrient-rich mud, carefully spreading it to avoid disturbing young roots. This replenishing keeps the soil loose and aerated, perfect for healthy plant growth. Between layers, you sprinkle crushed volcanic rock, a natural mineral booster that slowly releases essential elements like phosphorus and potassium. This technique, passed down through generations, is a testament to Aztec ingenuity. You pause to inspect a patch where nitrogen-fixing beans are growing. Their roots harbor tiny bacteria that naturally enrich the soil with nitrogen, a clever partnership that reduces the need for external fertilizers. Historians still debate how widespread such sophisticated soil management was across the Chinampa system, but your experience shows it's an essential part of sustaining productivity.
Nearby, water lilies and reeds grow at the water's edge, their decaying leaves forming part of the nutrient cycle. You carefully harvest some of this plant matter, adding it back into your soil mix as compost. It's a closed loop that mimics nature's recycling. You notice a group of bees buzzing around wildflowers on the bank, pollinators essential to your crop's success. Their hum is a soothing soundtrack to your work, a reminder of how every creature plays a role. As the sun climbs higher, you finish layering the soil and rake the surface smooth. The earth feels soft under your fingers, alive with unseen activity. You lean back and take a deep breath, the scent of wet mud mingling with fresh herbs. This soil is more than dirt. It's a living foundation supporting the delicate balance of your floating garden. Your chinampa isn't just a patch of land, it's a testament to harmony between human hands and natural forces, an ancient practice still thriving today.
The day unfolds slowly as you turn your attention to the fascinating world of pollinators buzzing through your chinampa garden. Without these tiny visitors, your crops would struggle to bear fruit, and your floating farm would lose its vibrancy. You move gently among the flowers, careful not to disturb the delicate dance of bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds. Their wings flutter softly, the sound almost hypnotic in the warm morning light. You watch a bee land on a bright marigold, its legs dusted with pollen, moving with a purpose that feels both urgent and serene. These pollinators are vital partners in your ecosystem. They transfer pollen between flowers, enabling fruits like squash and tomatoes to develop fully. Without them, your harvest would be sparse, and the balance of your chinampa could falter. You recall elders telling stories of how the Aztecs revered certain bees and butterflies as messengers of the gods, symbols of life and transformation. Their importance stretched beyond agriculture into the spiritual realm, a reminder that your garden is woven into the fabric of your culture. Historians still argue whether the Aztecs actively managed pollinator populations or simply benefited from the natural abundance of the lake's ecosystem. From your experience, it seems to be a bit of both, a harmonious coexistence shaped by careful stewardship. You check a nearby hive, crafted from woven reeds and mud, and see bees busily tending to their queen. Their hum fills the air, a comforting constant amid the quiet lapping of water against the chinampa's edges. You decide to plant additional wildflowers near the water's edge, sunflowers, asters, and lupines, to attract even more pollinators. These flowers provide nectar and shelter, creating a buzzing corridor that links your garden with the wider environment. A hummingbird darts past, its iridescent feathers catching the sunlight. You pause to admire its quick darting movements before continuing your work. By afternoon, the garden feels alive with motion and sound, a small universe thriving atop the water. You smile knowing that nurturing pollinators is as much a part of your job as planting and harvesting. It's a subtle art of inviting nature's helpers and trusting in their work. As the day winds down, you sit quietly among the blooms, feeling the soft hum settle into a peaceful rhythm. Your chinampa garden is a living symphony, each creature playing its part in the slow, soothing melody of growth and renewal. You begin your day with a gentle paddle along the narrow canals separating your chinampa from your neighbors. The calm water reflects the soft morning light as you prepare to check on the irrigation system that keeps your floating farm lush and thriving. Water management here is subtle but vital. Unlike traditional irrigation, where water is directed through pipes or channels,
Your chinampa relies on the natural ebb and flow of the lake's water and carefully maintained canals. This keeps moisture levels just right, not too dry to stress the plants, nor too wet to drown their roots. You inspect the small wooden sluices and reed barriers that regulate water flow, adjusting them as needed to prevent flooding. It's a delicate balance, requiring you to read the signs: rising water levels, changing weather patterns, and plant responses. You dip your fingers into the cool canal water, feeling its life-giving pulse. The water carries nutrients, supports fish that feed the garden's ecosystem, and even helps control pests. You smile, thinking about how interconnected it all is. Historians still debate whether the Aztecs engineered complex water control systems across the chinampas, or if these techniques evolved more organically. Either way, your hands-on experience proves their skill and adaptability. You notice algae beginning to form on the water's surface, an indicator to check for stagnant spots. Algae can block sunlight or alter oxygen levels, affecting your plants. You scoop some away gently, ensuring the water remains clear and healthy. Near the canal edge, water lilies bloom, their large leaves providing shade and habitat for fish and amphibians. These plants are more than decoration. They help oxygenate the water and stabilize the soil beneath. You pause to watch a small fish dart between roots, its silver scales shimmering. These aquatic neighbors help keep insect larvae in check, another part of the garden's natural pest control. Adjusting a reed fence to channel water flow better, you feel the satisfaction of a well-tuned system, one that requires observation, patience, and respect for the lake's rhythms. As the sun rises higher, you lean back in your canoe, letting the gentle rocking soothe you. The harmony of water, earth, and life around you is a peaceful reminder of why chinampas have endured for centuries. You think about how this slow, mindful approach contrasts with modern agriculture's rush and intensity. Here, every drop counts, every adjustment matters. With one last look over your floating farm, you feel gratitude for the knowledge passed down through generations and the chance to continue this ancient tradition.
The late afternoon sun casts long shadows across your chinampa as you turn your focus to pest management, an ongoing challenge on any farm, but especially one floating on a lake. Your first defense isn't harsh chemicals, but natural allies. You spot tiny dragonflies skimming over the water's surface, their delicate wings shimmering. These predators feast on mosquitoes and other insects that could harm your crops, keeping the balance in check. You inspect the leaves closely, looking for signs of aphids or caterpillars. When you find clusters of small bugs, you reach for a solution rooted in tradition, a spray made from chili peppers and garlic, strong enough to deter pests, but safe for your plants and the surrounding ecosystem. You remember stories of Aztec farmers using a variety of natural repellents, sometimes even planting marigolds nearby to confuse and repel harmful insects. It's a strategy as much about coexistence as control. Historians still debate how sophisticated Aztec pest management really was, but your garden's thriving health speaks to a nuanced understanding passed through generations. You gently prune affected leaves, disposing of them away from the chinampa to prevent spreading. The work is methodical and calming, a quiet rhythm that suits the gentle pace of your day. Nearby, you see a heron stalking the shallow water, hunting fish and amphibians that could otherwise disturb your crops. It's an unexpected but welcome helper in your natural pest control. You set out to reinforce physical barriers, woven reed fences and small nettings to protect delicate plants from larger pests like birds or rodents. As the evening light softens, you take a moment to sit on the edge of your chinampa, dipping your toes into the cool water. The gentle lapping sound blends with distant calls of birds settling down for the night. You reflect on how pest management here is less about domination and more about balance.
working with nature's checks and balances rather than against them. Your chinampa is a microcosm of harmony, where every creature has its role and every action respects the slow, steady flow of life. Tonight, as stars begin to appear overhead, you feel a deep sense of connection to the land and water, to the ancestors who taught these ways, and to the future you help nurture with each careful, loving step.
The soft glow of dawn warms your chinampa as you begin your final tasks of the day, preparing the floating garden for rest and renewal. It's a quiet, reflective time, one that seals the day's work and sets the stage for tomorrow's growth. You check on the storage of seeds harvested earlier, carefully labeling each bundle. These seeds carry the promise of new life, waiting patiently for the next planting cycle. You store them in woven baskets lined with dried corn husks to keep moisture at bay. You take a slow walk along the edges of the chinampa, brushing your hands over leaves and stems. The garden hums with life. The croak of frogs, the gentle buzz of late insects, and the soft rustling of reeds in the evening breeze. As the sun dips lower, you prepare the chinampa's surface for overnight rest. You smooth the soil, remove any fallen leaves or debris, and check that water levels in the canals remain steady. This preparation is a quiet ritual, a way to honor the delicate balance you maintain. Historians still debate how much rest the chinampas required, but your practice shows that a gentle pause, a moment of stillness, is vital for the system's health. You light a small bundle of copal incense nearby, the fragrant smoke curling upwards. It's a nod to tradition, an offering of thanks to the earth, the water, and the spirits that sustain your work. You sit quietly on the canoe dock, watching the lake's surface shimmer with the last light. The water mirrors the sky's deepening colors, a peaceful reminder of the cycle continuing beyond your efforts. Your chinampa is more than a garden. It's a living story of resilience, patience, and harmony. Each day's work threads into a tapestry, woven with care, history, and respect. As night falls, you feel the weight of a day well spent, the satisfaction of nurturing life in balance with nature's rhythms. Now, as you prepare to rest yourself, remember this: the floating gardens are a whisper of the past, a gentle lesson in sustainable living that still floats quietly on the water. The day's end brings a soft hush over the chinampa, like a lullaby whispered by the gentle breeze. The world slows, and you find comfort in the steady rhythm of water and earth, of life patiently unfolding beneath the stars. Let your thoughts drift, like leaves floating on the lake's surface, carried by a calm current toward peaceful sleep. Imagine the quiet rustle of reeds, the gentle splash of fish, and the cool embrace of night air mingling with the scent of fresh herbs and damp soil. In this moment, there is nothing to do but breathe softly and surrender to rest. The ancient gardens rest too, preparing to bloom anew with the dawn, and so will you. Now, dim the lights further, soften your breath, and let the quiet magic of the chinampa carry you into sweet dreams.